acquisitions. So first off, we got acquisitions, and we want to, let's say we have a $500 / a month budget, right? So you have a $500 a month budget and you want to get deals. What do you do, right? Well, we have, let's talk about the pillars that are bringing in leads right now. So we've got AdWords, right? We got Google AdWords. We've got direct mail. We've got ringless voicemail, RVM, ringless voicemail. We've got code calling, and we've got texting. So there's 5 pillars that we could allocate $500 a month toward to generate leads. Now, here's what I suggest. Should you do, if you have a $500 budget, should you do AdWords? I would say no, right? I would essentially, steer away from that initially. There's a learning curve involved. It takes time for the learning of Google to learn their pixel and learn how the leads structure. It takes about 100 leads in their system to figure out as that cost per lead goes down when you're targeting a site. I would not do AdWords as a pillar, as one of the pillars, if I had a $500 budget. Now let's talk about direct mail. Direct mail. So we want to use cheap postcards. You can use cheap postcards that are in REI Automator, which you guys all should have access to. REI Automator. So cheap postcards in REI Automator. And let's talk about, out of those cheap postcards, there are multiple different postcards in there. Now, because we're targeting, now here's the thing, I want to be specific, which is number 2 on our targeting in the list that we're going to hit. And I'll circle back to postcards. When we're targeting and we have $500 and that's our budget that we want to focus to generate sellers, and we want to target specifically small towns. And with the towns, they have to be over 50,000 and they have to have at least flippers in there. They have to have at least a minimum of 10 flippers. Now, if you're in Texas, would you hit Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth? No. Like in Phoenix, I'm in Phoenix. I wouldn't want to hit Phoenix. I'd want to hit the small towns outside of Phoenix, right? Outside of those, outside of Phoenix and these smaller towns. Those smaller towns are basically where there's no competition and there's a higher response. So let's say theoretically you're in Texas. You can hit Midland, Odessa, Longview. You could hit on the other side of Dallas, on the other side of the state. I don't know. There's places over there you could hit. So you could hit that. If you're in Georgia, like you could hit Savannah. You could hit Columbus. You could hit. There's Hampton, Georgia. We did a deal out of there. And what you're going to find is the response rates are going to be 2 to 3 times more than in these major competitive cities. Okay, so if we take that right there, I've got my postcard that we're going to target now. So we're going to pick a small city. That's the overall. We're a small little city, 50,000 plus in population, at least 10 flippers. If you don't know what flippers are, they're inside of REI Automator. It's a list selection called flippers, and you can actually select that list, and it will give you all the flippers, which are real estate agents that represent cash buyers that have bought cash and sold properties in the last 24 months. So postcards. Now, there's inside of REI Automator are postcards there. And there's the selection inside of actually Remote Millions. I explain what are the best postcards that I like. Also in the escape plan, I show that as well. Or you can use a site called yellowlettermail.com, and they have what's called a Street View postcard, which I like really well too. Street View postcard, and those are working well as well. So now we know the city. Now we know the marketing, the thing, the actual postcard. We want these cheap postcards. Cheap meaning under 40 cents. Under 40 cents is a cheap postcard. What's up? So now we have the city we want to pick, 50,000, at least 10 flippers. Now we have the postcard that we're going to send. Now we want to figure out the list we want to send it to. Well, we all know now that foreclosures, there's a moratorium on foreclosures. So I wouldn't really want to hit the pre-foreclosure list, but you can hit the property tax default list and the absentee owner list. Now, the absentee owner list, these are non-owner occupants. Again, we get all our data from REI Automator. And that is non-owner occupants that own their property for at least 10 years, right, on that property, and make sure you got residential properties. So you get residential properties. You also can select multifamily 2-4. Inside of REI Automator, we're going to select tax delinquent properties, 10 years plus in ownership. Make sure it's residential and multi-unit 2 to 4 units, right? Those are great properties that are selling right now, especially for absentee owners. And then you're going to pick the city, obviously, that you want to do business in. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to pull that list. So we're going to send a direct mail out to that list. And we can allocate out of our funds, let's say we have $500 a month, we can allocate a portion of that, say $300 to that, to direct mail. We're going to try to send as many direct mail pieces as we can for, say, a $300 a month budget. Now we got $200 left. Now with that $200, we're going to take that list and we're going to skip trace the list, right? We're going to skip trace that list. And once we skip trace that list, it's going to give us name, the information, of course. We're going to have telephone numbers and email addresses of the sellers, right? So now number four is we're going to ringless voicemail the sellers. Now, you can use RVM Lead Machine if you have that. I have the training on how to use that. They just put inside of REI Automator, actually RVM. It's not as cool as RVM Lead Machine, but it's in there, and you can set it up inside there. And I explain that in Remote Millions how to be able to do that. So you want to ringless voicemail. Ringless voicemail is along one of the cheapest ways to get your message in front of sellers as fast as humanly possible. So while you're waiting for the direct mail, you're going to send this ringless voicemail. You're going to get influx of calls from sellers. Those are going to be potential opportunities that you can turn into deals. So we're going to send direct mail. It's going to be a cheap postcard. It's going to be the tax delinquent 10-year ownership. We're going to basically, those people are going to have those, and these are non-owner occupants. These are investor people. They own residential properties, and they also own properties that are 2 to 4 unit properties. We're going to skip trace it, and $300 of the $500 is going to go toward direct mail. Now we have $200 left. We're going to use that to skip trace the list. That's going to be, I don't know, depending on the size, $50 to $100 maybe. Then we're going to ringless voicemail the list, and that's going to be the allocation of our budget, right? We're going to use the balance of the 200 for the skip tracing. Yes, we're talking about acquisitions. Skip tracing, and we're using that allocation for ringless voicemail. That is all the paid marketing that you're going to do. Now it's going to be on you when it comes to using Google Voice. Now, Google Voice is a free, and now this is where you're going to take action. And you could use your phone too if you wanted. But Google Voice is great because you can text out of there and you can call out of there as well. So what you're going to do now is, remember, you just skip trace the list. You have a list of everyone's landlines and cell phone numbers. You can call them, cold call them, and then you can skip trace them, right? You can pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, my name's Sean. We're happy to buy properties in your neighborhood, and we're going to be making offers to some of your neighbors. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in selling. It's a great way to generate business now. Right now, you can do it from home, you can do it over the phone, and you can do it today, right? You can get the list today and you can do it today. So now, number 5, what you're going to do is text, and you're going to cold call that list. Now, if we go down to it, what did you do? In a $500 budget, you allocated $300 toward direct mail, a cheap postcard you're going to send out. You're going to take the other $200, you're going to skip trace, and you're going to send a ringless voicemail, and you're going to text, call those sellers. Those, and then the people go, well, what's the frequency? Well, Ringless voicemail is cheap. You can do that literally 3 times a week. Cold calling and texting, it's free. It's not costing you a dime to do. So you can do that as much as you call them until you get a hold of them. You want to essentially treat this like you're a collection company. And I call it the collection method mentality. And the collection method mentality says you're going to act like you're a collection agent. Now, have you ever missed a credit card payment by mistake? I have. It's happened to me before. I missed a credit card payment by mistake, right? And all of a sudden, boom, these guys are calling me not just every day, but 3 or 4 times a day. It's essentially a collection method mentality. We want to use that to the frequency level when we're contacting these sellers, meaning you don't want to call them once a week. You won't want to call them twice a week. You want to call them as many times. You're going to go rotate that list until they either A, they have a property that they want you to purchase, or B, they're going to say, take me off your list, and you'll take them off the list. The rest of them, you're going to hound them until they sell their property. Most of the time, all your competition, everybody else is not going to attack that acquisition side, and your $500 is going to, you're doing this methodology is the highest probability of accomplishing getting that done right there. That's the highest probability. That's what I would do right now in the business. We're doing it right now in the business right now. But if I had a $500 budget, that's all I had. This is exactly what I would do right now to generate it. So that's acquisitions, right? For a $500 budget to generate leads in a small town, 50,000 or more population, at least 10 flippers. And flippers is a list selection inside of REI Automators. You put the city, and that's all you do, and you put flippers. You select flippers. Instead of tax delinquent, you do flippers, and you put a Biloxi, Mississippi. And you put Biloxi, Mississippi, then you put flippers, and it will tell you the amount of flippers on the right side. You want that number 10 or more in a city that you want to pick to do your direct mail, do your skip trace, do your ringless voicemail, do your calling, and do your texting. Okay, so that's $500. Let's talk about now. We're getting up to $1,000 a monthly budget. Everything stays the same as step 1 at a $500 budget. The only difference is now you have an additional $500 to allocate toward AdWords, right? And you want to allocate toward AdWords, and you want to pick, I gave you the top 6 keywords inside of Remote Millions, and also inside of the Escape Plan, and also I gave it to you inside the Flip to Freedom Academy if you're a Flip to Freedom Academy member. I gave you the top ones, and I showed you the campaigns and how we structure it. So that being said, start off your AdWords with just 2 to 3 keywords max. That's it. 2 to 3 keywords max. That's what you want to start out with. And you're going to allocate $500 a month to your AdWords budget. So now you have $500 is going to go to step 1 that we talked about. Then you're going to scale into the next one is $1,000 a month, is the exact same thing what we did before. We pulled the tax delinquent list, property tax delinquent list. That's people that haven't paid their property taxes. We're going to send them direct mail. We're going to cold call them. We're going to text them. We're going to send them a ringless voicemail. And that's a great way. And we're going to use the collection method mentality. And we're not just going to call them once or twice. Our frequency is we're going to inundate these people, right? How do you skip trace? You skip trace inside of REI Automator. There's literally a selection on the side that says skip trace, and you can skip trace that. All the lists. You can select the list in there, and you can skip trace it in the platform, which is amazing. So for $1,000 a month, right, you do that. So what if you have a $2,000 a month budget? Then the only difference is you're sending more direct mail, and you're spending a higher budget on AdWords. That's it, right? If you understand the fundamentals of what is working now to get leads, you can basically create your budget around that. So if your budget's $300, you want to do that. You want to allocate, instead of with a $500 budget, $300. You want to allocate it, right? Out of $300, you want to allocate essentially $200 to direct mail, and then $100 toward skip tracing. And now you're picking up the phone and you're calling, you're texting sellers.